Hi, I'm Karen Lose, 2001 Chair of Missoula Advocates for Human Rights, your local chapter of the Montana Human Rights Network. The following program will be, at various times, a potpourri of panels, call-in shows, pre-taped and live interviews, and short videos. Some shows will specifically respond to films produced by the racist and anti-Semitic organization known as the World Church of the Creator. Other shows will address other human rights and justice issues. Viewers are encouraged to contact us if you have questions or wish to participate in our activities. Our address is Missoula Advocates for Human Rights, P.O. Box 1254, Missoula, Montana 59806. Please stay tuned.
Truth in Action is a conversation on issues confronting all Chicagoans, presented by the City of Chicago Commission on Human Relations. The Commission on Human Relations works to create a bias-free city in 4 ways. It protects the rights of Chicagoans and others by enforcing and administering the Chicago Human Rights and Fair Housing Ordinances. It assists persons who are victims of bias crimes through victim support and community mobilization. It brings improved human relations to Chicago by offering workshops and working with community residents and organizations to develop regional and local community task forces. The Commission promotes those linkages through 8 advisory councils, which deal with the needs and concerns of the African, Arab, Asian, gay and lesbian, immigrant, and refugee, Latino, veterans, and women's communities.
Welcome to Truth in Action. I'm your host, Clarence N. Wood, and we're on the road today, joined by Reverend David Ostendorf, the Executive Director of the Center for New Community. We're at a Building Democracy conference sponsored by the Center, at which I will moderate a panel discussion entitled Journey Against Hate later in this program. But first, David, would you please comment on the mission and work of the Center and how they hook up to this conference?
The Center for New Community is deeply committed to countering the white supremacist, the racist movement in the Midwest. And this conference is a gathering of well over 200 people from across the Midwest, across the nation, who have come together to really work together, to be trained and educate, learn from one another, to develop more effective ways to counter this movement that is in our midst in every one of our communities.
And when we say in our midst, we mean in our midst in metropolitan Chicago?
We mean right here in our midst in metropolitan Chicago, all over the region as well.
David, clearly in a society that cherishes civil liberties, our power to stop a lone hater is very much limited. But what about opposing hate and hate groups that nurture such criminals?
We believe that the opposition to hate groups has to start at and has to be built at the community level. Every community, every neighborhood in Chicago, every community in the metropolitan area has to take responsibility for countering the racism, the hatred that is in its midst. And there's an understanding, sort of a common understanding, that this isn't a movement that is in Chicago, in the metropolitan area. That's the furthest thing from the truth. It's right here. We need to do everything we can in our communities, with our government, with civic and religious organizations, to put a stop to it and to educate youth to it, to have all of us understand that we have responsibility to build democratic communities and eliminate the kind of racism and hatred that this movement is about.
Our experience at the Commission on Human Relations and at the Human Relations Foundation is that too often what we do is we don't organize movements against hate, but we organize those movements based on who has been hurt. The African American community organizes against hate in the African American community, or in the Latino community, or in the Arab community. We organize based on our relationship to the hate. I am of concern, or have a concern, as to whether or not the time has not come for us to talk about hate as a universal act that we should be against, and that we mobilize and coalesce against that. Is that the finding also?
I think that's absolutely on target. That's one of the reasons we have such a diverse gathering of people here at this conference from all racial and ethnic communities, from the gay community, and I think working together to try to determine how we are going to stop this kind of hatred that affects every one of the constituencies that we've been talking about here, no question about it.
And better able to do the recording as it relates to women, disabled, and others who have actions against hates them that we
Absolutely.
often don't speak to.
That's absolutely correct.
Well, would you please set up for our viewers a videotape that we're about to see, Journey Against Hate, and the kind of examples it gives as to how concerned persons might organize and might do something about this problem.
Last summer, on the heels of the tragic shootings that took the life of several people here in the region and wounded many others, we and many other organizations got together to organize this Journey Against Hate that traveled through communities impacted by the shootings. And this video is a record, an amateur record of that gathering across the region, and we'll be showing that as a prelude to the panel.
Thank you very much, David, and we
Thank you
look
very
forward to
much.
the video and to the panel.
Thank you very much. In terms of background on the Journey Against Hate, shortly after the deadly shootings that were undertaken by Benjamin Smith, we got a call from a colleague at the Center for Constitutional Rights in New York City, and basically talking with us and other organizations about the possibility of organizing a journey that would move through all of the impacted communities that Benjamin Smith had gone through on his shooting spree last July. After quite a few phone calls, conversations, we began the process of organizing that journey. And participants from the National Coalition for Burned Churches, Rose Johnson is here today, she was on the journey. The Center for Constitutional Rights in New York City, the National Council of Churches of Christ in the USA, the Illinois Conference of Churches, and Nancy Tegmeyer is here to represent them, and she did a tremendous amount of groundwork for the Journey Against Hate in Central Illinois as well. And the Center for New Community, leaders and staff and participants from those 5 organizations, along with the Commission for Racial Justice of the United Church of Christ, gathered in Evanston to begin the journey on Thursday, July 22nd, and ended up in Bloomington, Indiana on Saturday, July 24th. And the video that we'll see today is a representation of some of the things that happened during that journey as we attempted to pull communities together to make a deep commitment to this journey against hate. I'm very honored and pleased to welcome our distinguished panel today as well. Beginning here with Mrs. Birdsong. Sherilyn Birdsong is the wife of Ricky Birdsong, who died at the hands of Benjamin Smith on the first day of his shooting spree. Mayor Charles Dabellaire is sitting next to Mrs. Birdsong, and the mayor and Dave Mingus on his left did a tremendous amount of work in the city of East Peoria, where we took the Journey Against Hate not only to the city where over 200 people gathered in a rally on a 95-degree afternoon, but we took the Journey Against Hate to the home and the headquarters of the World Church of the Creator. And I'm also pleased to welcome Catherine Matthews, who was a very close friend of Wan Jun-woon, who was also killed in Bloomington, Indiana. We're ready to roll the videotape. Thank you.
This is the headquarters of the World Church of the Creator, and this is its leader, Matthew Hale, responding to protesters outside the headquarters. On Friday, July 2nd, just hours after the decision announcing that World Church of the Creator leader Matt Hale had lost his appeal to practice law in Illinois had become public, World Church of the Creator member Benjamin August Smith began what would become a 3-day rampage of racially motivated violence. July 2nd was also the 4th anniversary of the first church meeting under Hale's leadership. Based in East Peoria, Illinois, the World Church of the Creator has become one of the fastest-growing white supremacist organizations in the United States. It is also an organization with a history of racist violence. This is a sign on the doors of the headquarters of the World Church of the Creator. On Independence Day weekend, white pride manifested itself in violence. Targeting Orthodox Jews in Rogers Park, Smith wounded 6 people as they were leaving Saturday services at the synagogue of the Congregation Adas Yeshurun on West Touhy Avenue. He then traveled north to Skokie, where he fatally shot Ricky Birdsong, former Northwestern basketball coach, as he was walking with his 2 children. Smith then drove his light blue Ford Taurus to Northbrook, where he shot at but missed an Asian-American couple. By midday, Saturday, July 3rd, Smith had made his way to Springfield, where he fired at 2 black men, missing them both. In Decatur, a few hours later, he shot and wounded Reverend Stephen Anderson. At 11:47 p.m. in Urbana, he seriously wounded Stephen Quao, a student at the University of Illinois. On Saturday, July 4th, exactly 1 year after his first World Church of the Creator literature drops around Bloomington, Indiana, Smith fired into a crowd entering the Korean United Methodist Church. Won Jun-yoon, a graduate student at the University of Indiana, was killed. Smith then fled the scene, eventually carjacking a vehicle in Enna, Indiana. Police then chased Smith into Salem, Illinois, where he took his own life before being apprehended. In the wake of this trail of terror, a small group of people decided to get together to help heal the wounds Smith's hatred had caused. Joining with local communities, such as this East Peoria group shown here, members of a caravan met with hundreds of people across Illinois and Indiana to discuss ways of preventing racism and violence. Just a few weeks after Smith began his journey of violence and hatred, this group embarked upon their own journey, the journey against hate. This is a collection of images from that journey.
Friends, we're going to have at this place a few moments of silence for three reasons. First of all, we're here at the heart of evil to commemorate and memorialize the victims, those who have died and those who have been wounded at the hands of the person sitting on the porch behind us. We're here also to pray in our own way that God would change the heart of this person and that evil would no longer reign out of this place. And finally, we're here to rededicate in our own way our lives, that the hatred and the evil, the violence, the killing, the racism, the anti-Semitism that emanates from this place and so many other places around our state and around the nation will end, and will end only as we begin to do our work more effectively. That's why we're going to spend a few moments here in silence, facing this house, facing the evil, and remembering, praying, and rededicating ourselves. Lest our silence be mistaken for complicity, we with raised hands today gather to say no more. No more. The kind of Mr. Hale's yards, of course, are grossly mistaken. We're not all white. We're not liberals. We're people of America standing together to say no to the hatred. We're people who are not ignorant. We're people who pray that God would be in this place and that God would change the heart of this man and all those who profess to follow him. But more importantly, we raise our hands in solidarity and with strength to say that we will not stand silent. We will not go quietly. We will work hard in every way we possibly can in our communities and across this nation to stop the hatred that comes from this place and so many others. Let us go forth from here. Let us give our blessings to the people of Peoria, to the mayor and all the people here who continue to struggle against this evil, and let us rededicate ourselves and remember those whose lives have been so devastated by the evil from this place. My friends, let us go forth, recommitted to stop the hate.
And I will launch this discussion to assess the impact of Benjamin Smith's 4th of July shootings rampage, an impact that we all hope he would find disappointing. I will also encourage examination of some responses to hate by those joining me today, people who have been placed or who have placed themselves on the front line against bigotry. Initially, I want to express a very unmoderator-like admiration for the courage they have shown, and we hope to learn something from it, and I thank you for that courage. Now, for the sake of good order, I ask that each panelist speak to the same question as we proceed down the line from Mrs. Birdsong. On one side to Ms. Matthews, with the understanding that they may jump in when inspired and contribute at the most courteous interval available to them. My first question concerns your reply to tragedy and how you arrived at it. what have you done and what are you doing in public settings in direct reaction to Smith's horrible journey of hate that brings us together today? Mrs. Birdsong?
Well, my response to the tragedy that happened, it's really hard to put into words, really. I've been asked that question many, many times, and I always go away trying to think of the words, but it's just really indescribable. My response, though, has been to try to do all that I can to, as this conference is doing, it's like, what can I do to stop this? I'm only one person, but what kind of impact can I have? And one thing that I have done is help to complete the book that my husband was writing. He was about 85% done with it, and it's a parenting book. And I feel that this can be one tool that parents can have to really equip them to raise their children so that they won't grow up to be a person like Benjamin Smith. The other response is establishing a Ricky Birdsong Foundation, which is really seeking to do similar type things as the Center for New Community, just raise awareness and have programs mostly geared toward youth to just bring attention to this issue and to try to make an impact to cause a change, and also to continue the work that my husband was doing with the youth in the community.
Thank you. Mayor?
Of course, the news of the tragedy was very saddening to everyone in the nation. We had a news conference soon after the terrible tragedy by Benjamin Smith. And out of that news conference came a tremendous amount of calls to my office to help in this situation. What can I do? You know, this isn't a reflection of our community. And we took those calls and we compiled the names, and we formed a Human Relations Commission, which Commissioner Mingus, sitting to my left, is the chairperson of, and he's done a magnificent job. He has monthly meetings, and then he has committees that have meetings other than monthly meetings. They have progressed very well. They've made the community very, very aware of, tolerance, diversity. We've given our employees diversity training, tolerance training throughout the city. And we are still getting support from throughout the community, not just in our town, but in the Tri-County area of East Peoria. And it's very refreshing to know that there are hundreds and thousands of people that, think in the line like we do. You cannot allow tolerance. You must teach diversity. We must all live here together in the United States in a peaceful way. And when you have individuals like a Benjamin Smith and Matt Hale, the World Church of the Creator, I know they have the First Amendment. That certainly doesn't make it right for the hate they preach and the violence they preach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Mingus.
Thank you. I think, first of all, being a human rights advocate for a number of years and my full-time job...
Speak a bit into the... Yeah.
Sure. I said I've advocated for rights for years for people. And my full-time job isn't the chairman of the commission, although it certainly seems like that, since that incident occurred, is a licensed clinical practitioner in the field of psychotherapy. So I empathize significantly with the events, and talking to Dave Ossendorf, I had a sickening feeling, and then I had a pretty angry feeling. And the anger was centered around, I love my community, and our community is a wonderful community. And to be honest with you, I've dealt with the gang people in the community, I've dealt with the drug abusive people in the community, and kind of the other side. But I really didn't know where Matt Hale lived until I got Dave Ossendorf's information telling me that there was going to be a rally. That's how insignificant that particular force was in our community. There's not a sign there that says his church or anything. So I was pretty angry about what happened. And I recall back at a conference we came to in Chicago, the Center for New Community sponsored. And I remember a rabbi telling us, I took it quite personal, don't let their hate become your hate. And I really had to echo those words, because that incident just elicited all kinds of self-thought, and I had to really look at the other side of that, and that is love. And it sounds kind of hokey perhaps, but I really had to get in touch with the other side of hate for a while. And then everybody's saying you can't do it, and in the community it's like everybody has an opinion and it's not going to work, and is it all words, or are you really going to do something? And there was a whole lot of response that we learned a whole lot. So what we decided to do is to get a diverse group of people, and I do mean diverse, and to attack this at a lot of different levels, a lot of different levels. One level is certainly you have to counter hate immediately and be proactive to it. And if we can be proactive instead of reactive, we thought that's a better posture to be. And I'm not going to give Benjamin Smith, and I'm not going to give Matt Hale the credit for this. They don't deserve it. When you dance with a partner and follow their lead, you go wherever they want you to go. And I refuse personally to give them the credit that they made this happen. I think a power greater than that prompted us to react in our city the way we have. And we have developed several tiers with a lot of different people to fight this in a lot of different directions. And not just to fight it in a manner of words, but actions. Actions such as the diversity training, actions such as going to our kids and say, how do you feel about being in your school? Going to kids and finding out that people who have disabilities, people who are of different sexual orientation, people who have to go to lunch line and their poverty with a meal ticket, that feel ostracized in our community. It made us look at everything. And I think that is really healthy, and we're continuing to look at it. And what I've learned is the venture is never going to be over. So what we've done is we're looking at the schools. We developed a philosophy. We developed a mission statement. We figured we need something to hold our hats to, something if we begin to deviate from it, we can go back to what we said is ideal. And developed a structure, and we were criticized pretty heavily too, and Dave's been wonderful. I get the telephone and say, are we on the right track? And Morris D's group has been really instrumental. And we developed a foundation and a structure, and our people are meeting now, and we're getting things done, and we've just began the journey, so that's the impact it had on us.
Thank you, Mr. Mingus. Ms. Matthews? Very good.
I think I can really identify with what Ms. Birdsong said about the unfathomable and indescribable nature of this horror. I can also identify with the anger. I'm trying to work through this in a lot of different ways, and one of them is sort of changing career paths. I'm a doctoral student at Indiana University, and I was planning planning to get my PhD in higher education and student affairs so that I could work with international student populations on university campuses. But these days I've decided that that's not quite where I'm being led to go. I'm considering minoring in law so that I can work with underrepresented and disenfranchised groups on campus, particularly in social justice issues. Sort of a larger concern for me is that Wonjun has in some ways lost his humanity. He's more of a symbol and less of a person. And I see it as my duty in honoring my friend to put his face back with his person, to give him his human dignity back. So opportunities like this are really useful, I think, because I can say to people, this is a human being. I think you said several times in the video clip that there is a human cost to hate. And I want people to understand that this was a person, and that this kind of hate, this kind of violence, takes away human dignity in ways that you just can't imagine. So I think that that's sort of how I'm trying to work through this or make an impact.
Thank you. In your opinion, did the Smith tragedy change the community perception of haters? In numbers of our communities, haters are accepted. They're tolerated until the act happens. We know they're there. Do you think this tragedy changed the perception of haters? Was it a wake-up call that haters and the hate organizations' harm can be deadly and extend beyond victims and the loved ones? The community's response, Mrs. Birdsong.
One thing that I heard from several of my neighbors was that they were just outraged that this could happen in their community. And I think that what happened on July 2nd really shocked us into realizing that, we really, there really is a problem, because I think maybe in Skokie, you just kind of get comfortable and you feel like, in fact, I didn't know this, but even my husband had said on the Tuesday, right before the Friday that he was killed, that he would hate to live in a neighborhood where he feared being shot on the streets. And I think that everybody in our neighborhood just kind of had that kind of attitude of, safety, that, we were real safe and sort of distant from, problems of hate. So really for us, it was like a wake-up call that this is really a serious problem, and we are not immune and distant from it, and therefore we do need to have a response. And there has been, I think, a real good community response in my neighborhood. Number one, the support that they have given to me and my children has just been outstanding. It's been awesome. I don't think I've made a meal on a Wednesday since last September. And just on a practical day-to-day basis, you mothers out there know that that is just a big help. And also, a community group was formed called Bridges, Building Relationships in Diversity in Evanston and Skokie. And that organization really took on the challenge of, what can we do as a community to guard against this. And the walks that started really helped to bring people out of their houses into the streets, and it was just a way for us to talk about what had happened, which is really helpful, to just be able to talk and to get to know one another and connect. And so all of those things have just been really a source of strength for me, just to know that other people care enough to really go out of their own way to help.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Well, the video we just saw was very obvious about all the communities that it affected responding, not only the religious community, but in our community, the business community. But let me give you a little background on Matt Hale. Matt Hale, of course, was born and raised in our city of East Peoria. We're not proud of that, but he does live there. We would rather he not live there. Matt Hale, even in junior high school, was fostering this hate that has been so projected now. The school administrators knew of this, but it wasn't too bad. As he got into high school, it got a little progressively more evident and worse. But still, it was no hate and violence at this time. When he got into college at Bradley University, he got a little more aggressive. He started passing out more and more flyers, and he was arrested a few times for aggressiveness, and I think one for gun possession. The police department has always kept a record of these activities, but once again, there was no signs of actual physical violence, just passing out flyers and showing the hatred. But apparently he got more desperate as he grew older, and it got him to the World Church of the Creator. I forget the individual's name that created the World Church of the Creator, but after he either passed away or stepped down, Matt Hale took that charge. So we've had to live with that in the community. Of course, once again, we're not pleased with that. A lot of people say, we'll make him move out of East Peoria. Well, you can't do that, even though we'd like to. But we've monitored the situation, and I know the FBI has monitored him very closely and will continue to do so. But what we have to do as a community, as a nation, we have to work very aggressively ourselves at counteracting this. About 3 weeks ago, Matt Hale, we've known for some time that he's wanting to appear in our local television access channel. We cannot prevent him from doing that. It's a public channel. What Dave Mingus's group is going to do is negate his violence and his preaching of hate with television programs either a day or two later. So, I feel very strongly that we are doing everything we can to work very hard and aggressively against this individual, and we will continue to do so.
We really have had a tremendous amount of awareness throughout the entire community and communities that we're affiliated with. Of course, when there's national news almost every night, the citizens are upset about the way the media's handled it at times. A lot of that, but I think that it's had a major impact, and overall it's been positive as far as creating awareness, not just within the community, but also the internet community. That's an area that so often we don't think about, and it's very much real.
I think for me, one of the important things is to recognize that each community is our community. So no matter where this happens, it happens to all of us. Before I knew my boyfriend was dead, I knew that there had been a series of shootings in Illinois, and I was devastated by that kind of hate and violence. And I didn't realize that it was going to impact me in such a deep and personal way. The community response in Bloomington has been remarkable. Actually, Bloomington United was founded more than a year before the murders of last July in response to the World Church of the Creator hate pamphlets. Bloomington has been really, really supportive in their, let's call it pre-murder events and their post-murder events with signs and T-shirts and rallies and speakers. Coming from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, where Wonjun and I both got degrees, we were aware of Matt Hale because he also graduated from SIU with a degree in law. So we were pretty aware, and I think the Southern Illinois University community was pretty aware. But what's been particularly, I think, positive for me has been the response from my extremely rural Tennessee community, a town of about 1,500 people who, have never seen a hate group. There are no Klan members, no racist signs on any walls. And they believe that it can't happen in this country. And they saw it on the news, and they were shocked, and perhaps even fascinated the way we are when we see horrible things on TV. And then they saw that it was real people. And then they found out that it was people they'd gone to high school with. It was my friends, it was my neighbors who saw me and my mother at the funeral service, and they realized that it was personal. And then they realized that it had happened in their community. So this otherwise untouched community was made aware of the powerful and pervasive nature of hate and violence. So for me, I think one of the most productive results of this has been that realization that an otherwise untouched community could see that they were in fact touched.
There are a number of high school students with us today. They have come to learn about white power music and to discuss youth organization strategies against hate. But all of you have had some experiences in community and with young people. What should we be doing to assist young leaders in their efforts to counter hate in our schools and in our communities? And Mrs. Birdsong, as you talk about finishing your husband's book, what can parents do to really sensitize young people and their own homes about this issue? And how do we move forward to deal with this question in the youth of our nation?
First of all, I would like to say that I didn't know that there would be high school students here when I was invited to come, and I was just really thrilled to see so many of the high school students here, so that's very encouraging. You all are the leaders, and so I just encourage you to just stay strong. I know that peer pressure is powerful, but if young people can just continue to choose the right friends and just be careful in what you watch and sites that you visit on the internet and all those types of things, and just bond together with people who have similar values as you do. I think that all of that helps, and I just think it's so important that parents, as much as possible, just stay connected with their kids. I just know that it's so easy. You think your kids are upstairs doing their homework on the computer and they're visiting sites on the web that, are just really brainwashing them. And parents can just sort of let the computer or the TV just be a babysitter. but we have to stay involved and really know what it is that our children are involved in.
Mr. Mayor, do you have
I do think a lot of this has to come down to parenting. I think parents have to take a strong lead in this. I think somehow we must get this in our school systems also. I believe Commissioner Mingus's group is trying to work with the grade schools and the high school with a program. And sometimes that's difficult to do. You know, you have people with different thoughts, and we're the city government, and they're the government of the schools, so we can't infringe upon some of their thoughts, but we certainly can encourage. But once again, it gets down to the parents' influence on children. And like friends, you've got to choose your friends. And peer pressure, you're right. Peer pressure has a lot to do with what young people think, what they do in the future. I have a lot of faith in youth. I gave a speech to a mayor's prayer breakfast last year, and there was quite a bit of youth there, high school. You have to have faith in our youth. I mean, some people even complained about people my age now that were 17 and 18, and they were afraid of what we were going to take them into in the 60s and 70s. We survived, and our youth will survive. There's a lot of great young people out there, and it's in the majority. And trust me, they will get us through this. We have to have faith. If you don't have faith, we're not going to overcome this. We just have to keep working harder and harder every day.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mingus.
Thank you, sir. I don't believe that you can necessarily legislate it or delegate it. It's a process that has to be internalized. And I can recall back in the drug abuse days, and we'd go out and we'd tell kids don't do drugs. And we thought that was going to do it. Education was going to cure them of drug abuse. It didn't do it. We had to give them alternatives. We had to say there's other ways of feeling high. There's other ways of getting that euphoric feeling besides a chemical. And I think that's what it comes down to with this also. We have to begin very young in life teaching kids that different isn't bad, different isn't something that you make fun of. It's okay to talk about something different, and we as parents and adults have to live up to that model. We have to examine our own behaviors, I believe, myself included, because we all have it. We all have it somewhere. It's just part of human nature, and I think it has to be dealt with, and it has to be dealt with openly and honestly, so we can take ignorance and fear and turn it into love and compassion. I really believe that. And it's going to take a long time, but it's going to start in the home. I think there's a spiritual sense to it. And I really believe that that is where it's going to be found, and that's where it's probably going to have to be a continuum. Education has a part of it, the church has a part of it, and everybody has to own their part. But there's a difference between lip service and that internalization. And I really think that we have to strive for the internalization.
Ms. Matthews.
In my doctoral program, again, Higher Education and Student Affairs, we deal with the student relations side of the university campus, residence life, international student affairs, minority student groups. And I'm starting to recognize on various campuses a resistance to diversity training and multicultural awareness. Some students, I hope an extreme minority, feel that it's just another PC tool, just another thing they have to be told about. And I urge students, I can't speak from a parent perspective as I am not a parent, but I think that at the university level, we have to point out that diversity, again, has a face. It's real, it's human, and it's not simply a tool for political correctness. It's just not another thing that those liberals are telling us to do. It's about human decency and human dignity. I also think that on an individual level, we all have responsibilities towards this internalization. Think about it when you're taking your child or your friend to an event. Does it promote tolerance and diversity? You can take someone to an interfaith service, to a cultural exhibition, to a museum that respects another culture. When you give a gift to a child, look at the book. Does it celebrate diversity, or does it say that we're all cut from the same mold and we all have to look the same way, and if we don't, well, then there's something wrong with us? You know, we need to internalize this, make it very personal, and then sort of practice what we preach. I think if we look around and see what we're doing, then we can find a lot of opportunities to do that on an everyday basis.
My work in Chicago for the past 10 years, every year we have had over 200 hate crimes. Some not as heinous as others, but some very heinous. It's also clear that if a Klan comes to town, communities quickly come together to organize counter-rallies. But it's far more difficult to keep community interest and commitment alive in the daily struggle to counter hate crimes and hate groups. More often than not, we respond in the same balkanized fashion that we live. If a hate crime happens to an African American, the African Americans get angry. If a hate crime happens to the Latinos get angry. If a hate crime happens in the gay and lesbian community, the gay and lesbian community gets angry. If it happens in the Arab community, the Arab community gets angry, and so on. Seldomly do we get angry as communities against hate. We do, though, often get angry when it is the hate against us. I cannot help, as we come near the time to end this, to raise a question somewhat more pointedly and more direct about specific institutions. What do civic, religious, corporate, and community organizations need to be doing to counter hate activity? Let me make it more difficult. In many of our towns, the hate message is driven by leadership. The message to profile becomes policy from the leaders. The message of exclusion becomes policy. How do we mobilize civic, religious, corporate, and community leaders to be leaders against hate and to sustain the momentum that we need to take the corrective action? Mrs. Birdsong? And I apologize, you're the first one, and I didn't give you that much time on this one. But
It's tough being first.
sorry being first.
Oh, gosh, I want to sit down on that end. That's a real, if we knew the answer, I guess we could all go home. That's a difficult question to answer. I guess the response that I can make to that is that, to me, things can maintain a long-range impact if you really feel it deeply, if it becomes a part of really who you are at a gut or a spiritual level. And I think that until it really just matters enough at those levels to a person, it is kind of hard to stay motivated over the long haul. So I think that as we examine ourselves individually and really say, you know, what kind of person am I? Do I really care enough about people that I can be motivated over a long time period enough to make an impact? And that to me boils down to, you know, just each person just answering that for themselves. Am I that type of person that your problem matters enough to me to make me really make a commitment to you or to do something about this problem?
Thank you. Mr. Baird?
Well, certainly it does take a concerted effort, actually a moral effort, to correct these wrongs. And I do believe our corporate community and our religious community and hopefully our educational system can start teaching some of this. You know, we know kids don't get along well on the playground, whoever they are, but to teach the tolerance and diversity in school, and I've seen it in the religious community a little bit more. I'm not involved in the school system. You know, I just get reports. My daughter-in-law is the secretary of a school, but I know it's not tolerated in East Peoria. But I do know that the effort of our Human Relations Commission, and headed by Commissioner Mingus, has done a tremendous job. They've made a lot of inroads. They've made the community very aware, and they're going to continue to do so. When I made the initial news conference and then a speech later, I made a commitment that we are in this for the long haul, and we are committed to that as a city.
I think as you read your question, I began to get fearful. And I'm not the scary kind of guy, but it's like our commission, is that what's going to happen to us? Because already I've seen where you know, it hasn't been quite a year, and we're really charged, and I see some of the members just kind of dropping a little interest. And what we've had to do is make it more personal. Make it more personal where the police department, even though the state's attorney is not going to prosecute them, they're going to arrest for hate crimes when they interpret a hate crime occurred. And then we as a commission have to ask the state's attorney, how come you didn't prosecute that case? And invite him, not out of hostility, not out of questioning his authority, but, sir, could you please enlighten us as far as what your prosecutory criteria is for a hate crime? If somebody has a complaint within our city, to give them access, even though that complaint may be bizarre in a lot of people's mind and unfounded, the commission has time to hear you. That puts it before us again and again, reminding us of our mission. But it's going to be tough because we are human beings, but I think as long as we can keep going and keep putting it out there, it'll be personal. The other thing I found, I've learned a lot in the past year, there are doers and there are talkers in all these different areas. And the talkers, you know, they might want to get elected, or they might want to climb the corporate level, and they think that'll look nice in their resume. I've had to really distinguish between the doers and the talkers, and I think that it's important and to spread it out. When I say I, please don't misunderstand. This commission I have is wonderful. They are great people, and I don't do it. They do it. But we've had to learn how to identify these different areas and to select people who ascribe to the mission and have a passion for the mission. And when we do that, we find that the talkers don't last long, quite honestly. You know, I brought one of our mission statements here, and we say, we want you to sign that you truly ascribe to our mission. And when people have to kind of sign their name and they have to look at that, you can kind of get some differences there. So I think commitment and all those things are what we're trying to ensure, and to always realize that we're on the brink of falling too, and using that anxiety to create somewhat of a motivating factor.
I'd like to speak to universities as community leaders. I read in a student paper not so long ago that in response to diversity training at the university level, that you can't change a person's heart. If they don't bring a certain sense of tolerance with them to the university, then nothing can be done with or about them. And I just can't bring myself to believe that. If a person can learn hate at 21 years of age, a person can learn tolerance. So I think that we still need to be very proactive in our university responses. A couple of ways I've just jotted down here are to incorporate diversity training into student first-year orientation, so that when students get to the university, they recognize that this is more than just the university's cute little catchphrase for the year, that this is something they really and truly value. They should provide a broad base and large number of multicultural events so that lots of different groups can be represented and therefore valued, and that lots of different people can come into contact with those groups. Universities should support diversity and community through publicity and promotion, funding and attendance of multicultural events. And they should also seek out opportunities to co-sponsor multicultural awareness with other groups. They should find community groups, religious groups, civic groups, corporate groups, and partner up with them so that they can strengthen this stand against hate and say that this is a large-scale effort, not just one small group seeming to fight against the darkness. I think it's important to understand that we just have to act and not react, that we have to be constantly seeking out ways to affirm each other in this most important fight.
Our thanks to Mrs. Birdsong, Mayor Dobelair, Councilman Mingus, and Ms. Matthews. If we go back to the journey against hate, then we've come full circle. The question we must ask is, has the journey already served its purpose? Do we have any thoughts for how we can continue the journey? Are we committed to the protest that we must make to send a message to the hater whose ego drives him or her to believe that we are all enemies? We must act now. We have been passive far too long, quiet far too long, and must understand that the message must be heard. The message of a civil society committed to tolerance, understanding, inclusion, acceptance. Now, not later. I'm Clarence Wood. This concludes the Journey Against Hate, this panel discussion, and a special edition of Truth in Action.
Almighty God himself hated the devil Lucifer to such a degree that he drove him out of heaven, gave him the earth as his footstool. And that devil is the Jew today. And this is why eventually a nation, once they discover this, they usually rise up and either drive them out or put them on a pyre.
They're called faggots because they, you know, a little faggot was a twisted piece of wood used to start a fire, and in England they used to burn faggots in the 15th century, whatever it was. So they call them faggots. And they should be burned now, you know.
Big businesses, they're selling to the gooks. It's not fair to the white man that's shoving us out the door. We need our own white community, and we need it now, and we'll go to any length to get it.
Yeah!
Yeah!
Crimes of hate are triggered by bigots who rationalize their own failure by blaming everyone who is different. Bigots who band together into organized hate groups promote intolerance and violence. Their message spreads like a virus among the alienated.
Right here in the United States, we have a terrorist organization. It's the Ku Klux Klan and groups which derive from the Ku Klux Klan. Ones that don't blow up airplanes, but are responsible for murders.
Several members of who are now serving time for the killing of Alan Berg and the armored car robberies were there at this meeting prior to what they killing Berg.
You know the thing with the order, knocking over the Brinks truck and getting their money that way. And, you know, well, we'd like to do that too, you know.
They have defined themselves as the only ones who have a soul. The blacks don't have a soul, the Jews don't have a soul. And then the inference that they draw from that is that when somebody doesn't have a soul, you can do anything you want. It doesn't matter. It would be like stepping on a spider or a worm.
Some hate groups glorify violence. They perpetrate it as a cure for society's ills. They incite others to violence, affecting individuals who are not members of these groups, individuals who commit most hate crimes.
I was with the Nazis, as I said, and Wittig picked me especially, and the guys in the San Gabriel Valley area. He told me, you got the guys out there, Mike, it's your group, why don't you handle this? He said, do something that'll really shake the Jews up. So I burnt the temple to the ground, me and another guy, my first lieutenant.
Anti-Semitic incidents are on the rise. Attacks on synagogues, cemetery desecrations, and physical assaults are increasing. A new generation of anti-Semites is now on the streets. They too believe the ancient lies and distortions that reveal the Jew-hater. The banner of intolerance has been passed on.
It all fits in with the theory that, you know, they want to take over the world, and the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is the blueprint for their takeover.
The Jew knows, as long as a Caucasian remains a Caucasian, he can never dominate the world. He knows that he can dominate the world with all the other species, but he knows the Caucasian has a higher intelligence, and this he fears.
Anti-Semites give easy answers to desperate people who are in search of an identity. Anti-Semites propagate a myth that Jews control the country, that Jews control the world. This distorted ideology leads once more to violence. Temple Beth David in suburban Temple City, California, was firebombed by Mike Canali and Eugene Nielsen, members of a Los Angeles-based neo-Nazi organization.
And we carried in a half-full can of gasoline. It was a Jeep can or a jerry can, as you might call it, a 5-gallon, half full with gasoline and oil. Well, we got in the window and we poured it all over the altar. It was at the time of Hanukkah. It was 3 days into Hanukkah. And there was a lot of rare books on the podium, and we poured gasoline all over them and all over the altar and the walls and the front rows of the chairs in front of the podium there. And I threw the match, and we took off, and I said, there goes the house of Satan up in smoke.
Thank goodness, you know, the fire was put out sometime later after extensive damage to our sanctuary and damage to our Torahs.
I truly believe that the Jewish people were into witchcraft, and they were just no good. They were all communists. And this is what I was made to believe while I was with the Nazi organization.
I think those people who committed the crime at that particular instance in their life had a vengeance and definitely a misunderstanding of their role in society and the role of the Jews.
This is a Ruger M77 30-06 bolt-action rifle. You kill a Jew from 1,000 yards away with this. Line them up. This is my favorite rifle.
One of the immediate reactions that our children had to the fire was one of fear. They really believed that people who didn't like Judaism were a threat to them. And some of the children had removed the Hanukkah decorations that had previously been in their windows. And it said quite openly to me that they didn't want those people coming to their house and burning their house down. And where we felt welcome and part of the community, we felt very much estranged and hurt and violated after the fire. And the largest outpouring, of course, was positive from the people of the community. The cards, the letters, the donations were wonderful and were a real sign of sharing and caring. And that helped to mitigate some of the hurt that was felt by our congregants and the fears that had been manifested within our children.
Temple Sinai in Glendale, California was desecrated by Joseph Dunlap, who was tied to the Aryan Brotherhood prison gang. When Dunlap was arrested, he was driving a van filled with neo-Nazi hate literature.
You cannot believe that your holy, most sacred place has been violated in this way, especially when you have the illusion of safety, which I think we all have now, or we create for ourselves. We try to understand Nazism, Holocaust, violent hatred as something that's in the past and that we have to respond to, but not something that's part of our present. It's a very rude awakening to be forced to deal with this in your life. Once you hit that point in your reaction, then you're filled with outrage and anger and pain yourself. And our main concern was for as few people in our congregation as possible to actually see this, to minimize the trauma.
The underlying intent, I believe, in any hate crime is just that, to terrorize. Terrorists thrive on not so much the severity or the seriousness of their individual act, but to cause people to live in fear and anticipation of what may happen next.
There are a myriad of reasons as to why someone becomes a bigot, not only becomes a bigot, why people are susceptible to the blandishments of stereotyping and scapegoating. There are all kinds of explanations. ADL has endeavored for many, many years to try and educate, because we realize that the best way to combat bigotry is to give people the intellectual tools to recognize when they are tending towards bigotry, and to pull back and to say, no, I know that I may not like so-and-so and he may be of this or that persuasion, but that doesn't mean that I go from one case to generalize to a large number of people. And I think by education, we have found, is really the best and the most effective way to prevent people becoming bigots.
I was disappointed not to have heard from some of the churches in the area, and we felt quite isolated. And it occurred to me that the isolation was as much our fault as anyone else's. So we chose Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, as a time to create an interfaith event within our temple community. And we had at the service on the pulpit representatives of the Catholic Church, the Episcopalian Church, the Lutheran Church, and the Methodist Church, and myself, all reading from the service. And we had members of all of these congregations together in our sanctuary, and it was a hopeful sign of the kind of building that can be done in communities in the wake of this kind of event.
Because of the Aryan peoples, the other peoples of the world have a higher status of life. Had the white man never existed on planet Earth, most other humanoids would still be wallowing in the mud.
For the bigot, racism is an escape from reality driven by an irrational need to prove personal superiority. Racists live in a fantasy world where white Anglo-Saxons are pure and strong. They are delusional warriors bent on subjugating all other racial groups.
We expect to have white rights, civil rights, and people saying that we ain't going to have no rights and be driven down in this country, they're heading for a big mistake if they think that.
I'm standing up for what I believe in now, you know. I'm with people that I like, you know, my own race. You know, I don't feel comfortable with other races because, you know, you can't understand them for the most part.
I like a whole white nation. So now the filth, the trash on the streets, we don't have no more race mixing.
Linda A. and her family were victims of a 9-month-long campaign of intimidation and violence. The perpetrators in this case, as in countless other incidents across the country, had one single aim: to drive the family out of their neighborhood because of their color.
Oh, maybe 3 weeks after that, we had eggs thrown in the front driveway and some sort of animal intestines left at the back door. Again, I reported that.
We decided that it would be a good idea to initiate a stakeout on this street since these were reoccurring crimes and since her daughter had been harassed on the way home from school by some male whites who yelled at her, "Nigger, get out of here," and other such statements, that we should be watching their house.
After the stakeout, maybe 4 weeks later, we had another shooting incident. Another car window was shut out, and we reported it again. 3 months later, another incident in which the window within our home was shot.
This entire incident went on approximately 9 months, and the victim subsequently moved out because she was in fear for her children and herself. This upset me very much because I felt that I had failed in protecting these people in the neighborhood.
You're just trying to live your life. You work hard. You like a certain atmosphere, a certain environment. You want to be there. You deserve to be there. And it's almost as if this is a reminder that you're different.
I don't think anyone should have to be subjected to any kind of fear because of their race or because of their color, their religion, and I'm very upset that this does occur, and I'll do everything I can to stop it.
In Glendale, California, a Latino family endured months of psychological torment, repeated phone threats, and physical attacks orchestrated by a cabal of neighbors.
A year ago, we started to defend our civil rights by taking pictures. And we have had an ongoing problem in this neighborhood for 2.5 to 3 years. Basically, it's the same cliche what they say, that you do not speak English, this is not your country, why don't you go back home where you came from? My wife responded, this is my children's country, my husband's. It should be mine too. My wife was beat up by a person that lives directly across the street. And he was followed my wife for 1.5 miles, pulled her over forcefully, got out, and proceeded to beat my wife continuously. He was arrested, and he was booked with assault and battery. He had a loaded gun on him.
No need no robberies, rapes, pimps. We just don't want no more trash. We want a clean white society.
My dad, he was a Vietnam veteran. You know, he fought for this country. And when he came back from Vietnam, he didn't have a very good welcome. And, you know, here it is again. It's like him living another war again.
And we're afraid and we're scared. And maybe sometime, this same time next year, I will not be here. I will not exist. But at least people out there will know that there's something wrong. Maybe it's in our society. Maybe it's just on Gromer Terrace. But something has to be done.
God was the first racist. He created the white man. He created the black man. He created the yellow man, the brown man, the blue man, the pink, the polka dot, etc. And he created all these different people and animals for different purposes.
On June 26, 1988, Mark Shane Lashley shot Terrence Godot as he and his cousins were fishing at Marina del Rey, California.
We started walking up the creek to go to the fishing spot. And while we was walking, we got about apartment complexes, and the guy was standing out on the balcony, and he started asking us what kind of fish were we gonna catch. He was laughing and everything, and he asked if we was gonna catch blackfish or whitefish. And we just started looking at him like, what you talking about, asking him that. And then we just went on down to the rocks, and then his friend came out on the balcony, and they started calling us names.
I was just playing, throwing rocks in the water, and they start, that's when they got serious. They start, they call us niggers. They start calling us niggers. And there's no question about it. To me, they're genetically inferior, and they're just, you know, peons to me. They've had their chances and they've never taken them, or if they've taken them, they couldn't do anything with them. They're just, to me, they're just peons that are being used. You know, they're here and they can't do anything else except sell drugs and boost the crime rate and rape white chicks.
He aimed at all of us at first, and then he started aiming at Trent, and Trent started running, and I ran and jumped in front of him and started running with him, and then he shot. I received a letter in the mail that said that too bad the guy was such a bum shot. He should have killed all you black niggers.
On May 9th, 1990, Mark Shane Lashley was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 14 years, 8 months imprisonment.
I never had no anger from the white people, nothing like that. It's just that I just met a wrong person.
Two murders and a few muggings is a pretty dramatic manifestation in one community, and we all know that they've taken place. You know, we want other people to know they've taken place.
In America today, gays and lesbians are assaulted and attacked in higher numbers than any other cultural or ethnic minority. Long a hidden issue, the pervasive stigmatization and hatred of gays and lesbians is being actualized in a brutal and ever-increasing range of attacks that constitute nothing less than a reign of terror. Streets are not safe, not in small towns, not in the gay ghettos of big cities.
You know, you got these homos and lesbians and all this crap, and that's a good indicator of when your society is on the downfall, is when you let the homos out of the closet, because you can never accept them as an alternate lifestyle.
It's more than young punks proving their machismo by beating homosexuals. Now, the AIDS crisis has given haters a false banner to justify their violence. Gays and lesbians feel all alone, struck down by a society that does not seem to care. Their resolve to fight back growing ever stronger. They are fighting for their right to live, their right to be who they are.
I believe that an individual who engages in gay bashing, real gay bashing, is a special kind of psychopath who believes that they are asserting their masculinity by preying on on gays.
Gary Yetner was attacked in West Hollywood, California, by 8 baseball bat-wielding teenagers. That he survived the attack is a testament to both personal courage and a powerful instinct for survival.
We were ambushed by a group of people. My friend was hit across the face with a baseball bat, and I was hit from behind, which made me fall forward onto the ground. They kept pounding on me till I jumped up and fought back. When I did, they almost froze where they were at, realizing, I think, what they had done. And this being a type of thing, there was no robbery involved, there was nothing. It was outright, as it appeared to me and everyone else, a gay bashing.
What I promote is, you know, bashing them, and the thing is to get away with it. That's the trick, getting away with it. If you can do it without getting caught, you should do it. But don't waste your jail time on them, you know. And the favorite motto is act and disappear.
It could have been any person who came around that corner. It just so happens that I am a gay person, and I'm aware of that, and I'm at ease with that, and that doesn't bother me. And I know what they were looking for. They were looking for a weak victim, because they have a stereotype of who that is. And it could have been anybody.
They have an image of you as being a person who's going to accept it. And when you fight back, they don't expect that. It kind of takes them aback a little bit. But I believe there's dynamics within those kinds of groups, and I also believe that those types of groups do not have the normal method of venting. They don't deal with their problems.
These are crimes of trauma. These aren't just you've been robbed of money. Your life has been at stake. And that not only that, but your personal psyche is surely shattered by the whole experience. And you're not going to wake up tomorrow and say, oh, well, okay, that was yesterday, I'll go on with life. That very thought that this could just happen to you stays with you for a long time. And it won't dissipate easily.
The majority of gay bashings are directed at men. They are not the only victims, however. Increasingly, lesbians are being threatened, attacked, raped. In New York City, Cherie and Barbara encountered both homophobia and racism.
The worst part was that the person who broke in wrote all this anti-lesbian stuff all over the walls.
It seems like one way to prove where you stand is to show who you ain't.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way you do that is to act out violently against those, you know, who you're proving you're not, which are queers.
Right.
You know? And I think that's the same motivation for hitting up on a lesbian or a, you know, gay man.
Mm-hmm. It was so directed, you know, it wasn't just like the general, the random kind of violence that probably any New Yorker has to cope with. It was about me being black, it was about me being a lesbian, and it was about me being a woman.
Gays and lesbians comprise a recognizable cultural minority in America, and we have constitutional rights which are protected. We have the right to be left alone. We have the right to be free from violence, to enjoy our homes and our careers. And if there are those in society who are encouraged to attack gays and lesbians, then there will be consequences.
Doug A. was brutally beaten by Donald Miller, a gay basher who killed 4 gay men in the Los Angeles area. Despite a remarkable recovery, Doug will always suffer from severe brain damage.
Doug had gone out with his roommate and my roommate and for a couple of beers, and he was going to just go out to have a good time, and he never came home that evening. He was missing for 4 days before John Doe had showed up at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and it turned out to be Doug. He was in critical condition. He was in a coma. It didn't even look like Doug. He was so badly beaten. He looked like a corpse, and he was on life support machines. He couldn't breathe on his own.
I don't remember anything about getting hurt and being attacked. I don't remember anything about that. The recovery, I remember.
I knew he was going to come out of this, and I knew that I had to give every ounce of my energy to it, which I did.
Steve was constantly reminding me, come on, keep on. Come on, you're going to do better. And that helped. I don't really have a lot of feelings about Donald Miller. I don't remember him, or it was awful what he was doing, but at the same time, I don't remember a lot about it. You know, I'm sorry I met him that night, but I don't really have any feelings one way or the other.
A lot of these cases is somebody that really is having some kind of problem with their own sexuality. And also that society has given to a degree permission that this is okay actually to do this to gay people.
Those who are bigots do not stop at classes, at races, or again at gays or lesbians. Those who hate you hate me. Those who hate everybody. Those who hate Jews will hate blacks. And those who hate blacks will hate people simply because they talk differently or because they believe in something that they refuse to believe in. They are committing sins. Sins against society, sins against humanity, and against creation as such. We have no right to limit freedom. We have no right to limit respect, because anyone who begins will not stop.